We, of course, are also trying to address in closing the issues around our schools.
The college application scramble is already so stressful, but right now students are facing even more uncertainty than ever before.
The admissions offices in particular are faced with questions about recruitment of the class of 2021.
The whole situation is a bit nerve-wracking.
Students in colleges have never been in this scenario before.
I am feeling pretty stressed about the college admissions process.
The amount of uncertainty and the lack of control is kind of worrisome.
We're kind of venturing into the unknown, and a lot is going to change about the process, so it'll be different from what we've expected and what we've prepared for.
My school did just move to credit, no credit, and I've always been told that second semester junior year is the most important of your high school career. So not having the grades to show for it is pretty nerve-wracking.
And it's still very unclear about how colleges will be treating testing.
A lot of schools are going test optional. I'm not sure what that means in terms of how they weight other aspects of the student.
What is your advice for the high schoolers right now in quarantine? What should we be focusing on? And what is the most important thing that you recommend us anxious and confused high schoolers to do to stay on track?
And welcome to this special edition of our 3 p.m. show, Getting Answers. Today, we're devoting our time to a topic that's extremely impactful and stressful to high school students and their families, the college admissions process, which has been thrown into chaos. And as you just saw, high school students have lots of questions. So today, we're going to get some clarity and guidance from a leading Bay Area college counselor and none other than the director of undergraduate admissions for the entire University of California system, Han-Mi Yoon-woo. Han-Mi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're just grateful that as busy as you are, you can join us for your first ever TV interview. So I want to start with the two biggest changes for UC. Let's go ahead and put that up. One, suspending the letter grade requirement for A to G courses. And two, suspending the standardized test requirement for students applying for the fall of 2021. So my question is, what is the overarching principle you use to make these changes?
Well, we understood that students would be entering into really challenging times, and we wanted to make sure that they were not discouraged, or having these regulations in place would not allow them to enroll at our campuses. And so we quickly moved to suspend, as you said, the requirement to have letter grades for our college preparatory education courses, which are known as the A through G. And then, as you said, with the cancellation of multiple test administrations, I think that the options for students to actually be able to take the exams became very limited. And so we decided to suspend the requirement to have the ACT or SAT as part of the admission process for fall 21.
All right, let's start with grades. Okay, so some schools are giving letter grades, other schools are giving credit, no credit. UC has said it will compute GPAs using whatever letter grade students have, so whether that's 3 semesters or 4 semesters. But many students are wondering, how could you possibly put them on an equal footing?
Well, the assumption is that they were on an equal footing to begin with, and we know that there's never been uniformity in how GPAs or grades are awarded across schools and across districts. And so we will, use the information that is available. And if schools want to provide their students with just a short statement that they can insert into their application when the time is right, to let us know what policy that individual school took, that will help our readers understand the context of the grades that we are seeing when they apply.
All right, but what if you have a school district that decides, for example, to give all their students automatic A's? Would you compute those A's?
Well, if there are letter grades to be used in the GPA, those would be included, of course. But again, I think that it would be helpful for our readers to understand the context in which those grades were given. And so if the policy for the district or for the school was to provide everyone with an A, then we will understand that it may or may not be a true reflection of their performance. But I think schools are trying to make the best decisions to support their students, both academically and also just in terms of their mental health and their overall maintaining their level of stress and anxiety to a minimum.
Sure. I've also heard of some schools that are going to offer students a choice of getting a grade or getting pass-fail. So do you prefer the student who chooses one over the other?
I wouldn't say that we have a preference, but as long as we know what the policy that was adopted by the school is, that will help us in understanding when we do see that information provided to us on the application.
Okay, would you consider delaying the application deadline this year so that students could perhaps have their senior year first semester grades count towards the GPA?
I don't think that we would delay the deadline. However, I do think that you're on the right track, that we may see campuses asking for, from some populations of students, seventh semester grades when they are available, perhaps in January, if they are noticing an upwards trend that was not fulfilled at the end of the junior year, they may want to see those first semester senior grades.
All right. Would it be more fair, some people are wondering, to simply not compute spring 2020 grades at all for anybody, given the huge variance you have in what schools are doing and the remote learning quality for the different school districts?
Well, again, if a school decides to provide grades, the students those grades will be viewed in context of the local school. And so, and it's one term of grades. I think that in general, all of our readers, our admission professionals understand that spring 2020, that term is an anomalous term. And so, whether or not it's factored into an actual GPA, they'll understand, what they're looking at.
All right, let's shift to the SAT or the ACT or the testing. So you're not requiring them, but will you still consider them if a student has taken them and wants to submit their score?
Yeah, so essentially we've moved to a test optional cycle for fall 2021. And I want to make clear that the regions are considering what to do beyond 2021. And so it is a temporary suspension of the tests for the upcoming admission cycle. And we'll have more information about future cycles in the next couple of months. But in terms of students who may have already taken a test or plan and are able to take a test this fall, if they have scores that they do want to submit, then we will welcome that. And those include either for the ACT or the SAT.
All right, you know how a lot of students, especially overachievers, wonder if optional truly is optional. So is it truly still more advantageous to submit a score if a student can take a test and submit that score?
Well, our admission process is, we use comprehensive review, multiple measures of academic achievement and academic promise, and it's an additive process. And so we are looking for information that builds the student's portfolio of information, but nothing is ever deducted. And so when we say that scores are optional, if the scores are such that it provides additional information about the student's academic performance, maybe to supplement their GPA, then it would be used as an added value factor, but we're not going to deduct in any way for anything that is missing in the application.
Okay. Now, as you know, the College Board has said it'll start doing a lot of testing starting in August, hopefully, maybe the fall. And if they have to, they'll administer them remotely with students taking it from home. So if a student were to submit a score that's from a take-home test, would you look at that score a little differently from the scores of students who took it before, the regular way, if you will?
I don't know what that administration is going to look like. And so, I feel like I can't really speak to that at this time, but we will, I think we'll have to cross that bridge when we come to it, because we don't really know. There's just too much uncertainty with the new what they're proposing to do in the fall.
Okay, I'll check back in a few months on that one. I want to move on to a couple other questions that are necessarily related, not necessarily related to testing and grades, and that is, if you take away some of those data points, right, would other factors then become more important? What are they? And really, holistic admissions is something you've always done at UC. However, given the mass quantities of applications you process, over 200,000 across the system each year, how could you do the kind of deep dive into each student that perhaps smaller private schools could do?
Well, amazingly, our campuses are able to manage their volume, which, as you said, is great. And they do hire external readers to help them, but most applications are read at least by 2 individuals, one possibly an external reader, and then one a seasoned internal admissions professional. And when you asked about, the way that holistic review works is no factor is given a fixed weight in any way. And so there's no factor that is more important than the other. It's really, like I said before, we're looking for multiple measures of achievement and performance that all build to bring the students' best qualities to light.
Okay. All right, that sounds fair. I do want to also ask you, UC typically doesn't grant a lot of deferments, deferrals or gap years, but this year we probably expect many seniors to request that, right? So what is your plan for that, and what does that mean for the juniors who are applying for spots next year? Will there be fewer spots?
In general, UC has not offered a lot of deferment opportunities, and so I think for students who are interested in pursuing that option, the best place to start would be with the campus to which they are wanting to enroll, and the campuses will work with them in processing that request.
All right. One final question, and then we got to go, which is a lot of students, they look at the pass-fail system and they think, oh, with that and with fewer international students, possibly it might be easier to get into the UCs this year. Others think differently. They think it'll be a crapshoot, perhaps harder, even if they're high achievers. So what do you say to all that? The students who are like, it's going to be harder, it's going to be easier, I just don't know. What do you say to them to kind of relieve that anxiety of not knowing?
Mm-hmm. Well, again, I just have to go back to our comprehensive review process where we're looking at everything that's in the application, and we are asking them to respond to 4 personal insight questions where we can really learn about what is really motivating students, what their interests are, what their what the greatest achievements are. And so I think if they can highlight for us who they are, and that they are, and we understand that students are more than their grades and a test score, and so that's why we use comprehensive review.
They've always been, and this has brought that into the spotlight. Hami Yunwu with UC's Director of Undergraduate Admissions, we thank you so very much for taking the time today to help out the Bay Area high school students who are applying and giving us those answers. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, we'll keep the conversation going. Okay, when we come back, we'll have a Bay Area counselor to answer your questions. Meantime, our live stream continues right now.
In commercial break.
All right, Hami, that was fantastic. Do we have time to, you got to go, or right now we're just doing streaming on Facebook. So do you have time for maybe one more question? Oh, we don't. Oh, bummeroo. Okay, we're setting up for our next. So thank you very much. That was great.
Thank you.
From the bottom of my heart, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Go Bears! Woohoo! See my yellow and my blue background?
Yeah. I noticed that. Okay.
Okay, take care.
Thanks.
All right. All right, you guys, commercial break is when I get to have a little fun. Thank our guest for taking the time to share information and insight with us. And it's also my chance to reset. Coming up next, I'll tell you what we have coming up. We have a great Bay Area college counselor who knows a lot about the landscape of admissions, and she guides Bay Area students all the time. So keep your kids close to the TV, and if you send any questions, we'll try to get a few in. All right, go over there. There we go. Da, da, da. Hi, Lauren.
Hi.
Good to see you. All right, let me get myself set up here. Alicia and Eric, how much time do I have here? So can Lauren see our students that we will play the sound for? Okay, okay. Okay, you have the questions that the students pose.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fabulous. All right, let me log into Facebook
20 seconds.
and see if I can find any of your questions, folks, and I can check it out. Oh, lots of comments. Thank you. Using
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
And we're back with our special on college admissions. Earlier, we heard directly from UC System about the changes it's making in admissions requirements. Now we want to address how to succeed given that changing landscape. These are a few of the questions that high school students sent us.
Given the current situation of COVID-19, what can a person do to better their chances of getting into a UC?
With SATs and ACTs being canceled, how does that affect the importance of letters of recommendation?
Is there something that we can be doing from home, or like things that we should start planning ahead for that will make up for that gap? Or is it just okay that people couldn't do anything this year?
So joining us now to answer these questions and more is Lauren Cook, Dean of College Advising at the Jewish Community High School of the Bay in San Francisco. By the way, Lauren's also current president of the Western Association for College Admission Counseling. Lauren, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Boy, you saw how many of those kids had questions. Let's start with Tristan's. What can students do right now to improve their chances of getting into a UC this year?
Well, I think, the UC application is really self-reported. And so the student is really in charge of what they're telling the institution. And so I think you got to think about what's under your control right now. And so your grades right now from this semester, if you do have grades that are going to be given to you and can work on raising them before the end of the school year, I think that's going to be really important. And then writing, of course, is important and something that you have total control over, those essays that you're writing, until the moment that you hit submit next fall. And so the UCs ask for 8 personal insight questions. They want you to respond to 4. I think you need to think about what are the 4 things you most want to get across about yourself and try and select questions that allow you to address those topics. You really have to think as if you're being your own best PR agent.
Do you think a lot of kids are going to write about their COVID-19 experience, and do you think that's necessary to write about it?
I think it depends on the student. Yes, there is a lot of joking going on in college admission circles that this is going to be the most popular essay topic next year, sort of what you did during the pandemic. And I think that that would be fair if that feels like the most important thing for a student to talk about. I would consider what your way in is through that topic, because I do think it will be so popular. But I also know that some colleges, I don't know whether this is true for the UC specifically, but are talking about creating a space, the Common Application has mentioned this, where you can talk specifically about COVID-19 and whether that's how it might have impacted your family, financial situation, your housing, that sort of thing, or whether it's about the impact it had on your schooling or some other story that you want to tell. So I would think about all of the things that make up who you are and try and be really strategic in terms of what you choose to talk about. And if COVID-19 is it, then that's it.
All right. You also heard Tayo asking, how does the cancellation of SATs and ACTs affect the importance of letters of recommendation? That's a good one. And that's probably something you have some control over or can influence.
Absolutely. And this is where you have to kind of separate out schools like the UCs that don't ask for letters of recommendations from the many other schools that do. And I do think as we look at this test optional landscape, yes, the other pieces of your application are going to perhaps increase a bit in importance. And so those letters of recommendation, yes, I think you again want to make really good choices about the teachers that you might be talking with. I think some test optional schools are interested in hearing perhaps from different disciplines. So choosing someone from the humanities field and then from a STEM field to kind of provide a little bit of balance could be useful. But I also want to just express to all the public school students out there, and I was a public school student myself, that you might not know your college counselor terribly well, and the college counselor recommendation is often asked for as well. And if that person doesn't know you really personally, that's okay. And colleges get that caseloads can vary wildly. So for example, I have a smaller caseload at JCHS, but at some public schools it may be a couple of hundred students to one, and that's all right. But it's also important then it puts a little bit more emphasis on those coming from your faculty members, and then perhaps a coach or a rabbi or someone outside of your school as well that might know you very well.
All right, Lauren, I also want to touch on the strategy of whether you should submit your SAT score if you get a chance to take it, right, since it's optional for a lot of places, including UC. Some kids think that overall the scores will be lower due to the circumstances, so therefore it's okay to submit a lower score. Other people think no way, because if it's optional, only the high scores are going to submit, so if you don't get a really top score, you're actually going to look worse. What's the strategy there?
Well, I think the first thing, and of course, the advice I'm going to give now is good for today, as the sand seems to be shifting under our feet. You know, it's sort of evolving every day. But I would say the first step is to take the test if it's available to you. Well, we do have, lots of institutions that have gone test optional, which I think is tremendous and really responding to the situation right now. There are some that have not. All of the IB institutions right now, for example, are still requiring test scores. So I would say if you can get a sitting in the fall, and now that it looks like the SAT and the ACT are both going to be introducing online, perhaps at-home tests, you should be able to take at least one test, to take the test and see how you do. As you said, yes, we might not be seeing the tremendously high score averages that we've seen in the past if you can't take it multiple times, or perhaps create that super score across tests. But see how you do on that sitting that you're able to take, and then make an informed decision with perhaps the advice of an admission rep or your college counselor about whether you actually submit it or not.
All right, Lauren, great. That's a great start. We want to continue our conversation after just a short break on the air, but you can join us on our live streams right now and continue our chat with Lauren. We'll be right back.
In commercial break.
All right, Lauren, during our commercial break, while we're on Facebook and YouTube with our live streams, could you talk about whether students can completely forget about the SAT subject test at this point?
Could I right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I think that subject tests really should be secondary in terms of your priorities right now. They have been de-emphasized in the process over the last decade generally. We've seen a lot of institutions drop the requirement. I think there's only 7 colleges currently that are still recommending them for use. So I would say, again, if you can get a sitting for a test, and I say this because the SAT and subject tests are offered on the same day, take the SAT. I think having that general benchmark is going to be more important than pursuing a subject test at this point.
All right. How much time do we have before we go back on air, guys?
1 minute.
1 minute. Okay, I'll squeeze in one more question here if we can. Do you expect the acceptance rates to be higher or lower this coming year?
I don't know that they're going to change dramatically, but I think you'd have to disaggregate it by tier of institution. I think the highly selective places are still going to be highly selective. I don't think they're going to become less popular in this next year, but I think some of those institutions that might struggle for a bit more attention, or that are more tuition driven and really need to fill every seat, might accept more students to try and offset any differences in their yield after the pandemic.
All right. We're coming back on air, so we'll hang on for like 20 seconds. And then come back with, how much time do we have to finish the conversation, you guys?
3.5 minutes.
Sounds good.
We are back in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
And we are back with Lauren Cook, Dean of College Advising at the Jewish Community High School of the Bay in San Francisco. Lauren is current president of the Western Association for College Admission Counseling, so really happy to have your insight. I want to pick up from where you heard Annika, one of the students in the last block. She said, is there something students can do from home right now to make up for the cancellation of all those wonderful summer opportunities they were going to put on their college applications, their research project, right, that their summer program, whatever they were doing? What can they do from home now?
Yeah, that's a really good question. A lot of my families have been asking me that. And I think that you've got a lot of options. And I think that your choices should be guided by what you are already interested in, already invested in. I do think there's some families that have an impulse to sort of ask, what can I do right now that would look good, especially in relation to COVID-19? Is there volunteering opportunities I can engage in? And I would always encourage people to think about it from the other point of view. Think about being the most you that you can be. So what makes you happy? What do you get excited about? That will make admission officers excited too. So to get to some examples, if you're an artist or performer, this is a time to continue honing your craft. You can consider how you can develop new work during this time, start developing that portfolio for submission, become familiar with technology that's going to let you record the output that you're doing. If you're a writer, a journalist, an aspiring historian, record your experience right now. Future historians will thank you for that. And certainly there's volunteering to be done. And if you are unable to conduct some of your normal summer activities this summer, think about taking an online class at a local community college that can contribute to your academic profile, perhaps raise your GPA a little bit, and also show your investment in continuing being a lifelong learner and pursuing perhaps that area that you want to major in college.
All right, I want to ask about next year's tuition and fees. I know UC is not ready to talk about it because they can't advocate for a change, whether it's up or down, without knowing the state budget, and they're going to work with the state on that to try to keep their funding level up. But what can you tell students with regard to trying to line up financial aid or scholarships next year?
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough one, and I think that this will continue to be an evolving situation. Some institutions will be raising their tuition for sure. We've also seen some institutions doing what they're calling a tuition reset, where they might lower their price to be more attractive than some of their peer institutions. So I think, it's anybody's guess right now. But in terms of lining up the finances to be able to pay for college, I definitely encourage everyone to submit a FAFSA starting on October 1st. That's the free application for financial aid federally. The state of California also offers the Cal Grant, where you can get money from the state. And so you definitely want to take advantage of that as well. And be looking for outside scholarships, as you're able. But this is another unknown as we go.
It is. We have about 15 seconds, but I do want to get this in, which is normally students might be visiting colleges right now or road trip over the summer. Without that, what can they do to learn about colleges?
Get online. Colleges are just as worried as you are that you're not going to be able to learn about them. So we're seeing a lot of virtual tours and information sessions being available. I went on a virtual tour for Santa Clara University last week where the tour guides were on skateboards. That was fun. So people are being creative. Definitely take advantage of what's out there and try and connect with the admission rep that might be responsible for your high school. Most offices are organized regionally, so there is a human being that is responsible for your zip code or city. So connect with them and ask your questions. All
right, Lauren Cook, thank you so much for that information. We're going to take a break on air, but you can continue the conversation with us on live stream platforms, including ABC7news.com. All right, Lauren, if I can keep you for 2 more minutes, can we do that? Sure. We have time, Mr. Director?
Yes.
AKA God? Oh, great. Okay. I have a friend who's watching us who wants to know what happens with the seniors. Will school start on time? I think that's probably a big unknown. Will deadlines be extended from May 1st for decisions? That part a lot of people are wondering about.
Yeah, so there's almost 400 schools that have extended their deadline beyond May 1st to June 1, and some are saying we'll work with you on a case-by-case basis if it needs to be longer than that. So yes, I do think that colleges are trying to react with some flexibility, and it is an unknown about opening in the fall. I think that colleges are starting to be transparent about the fact that they're talking about it, whether it might be online learning, where they might actually not have a fall semester and try and reopen for the spring semester. I think those are both options right now. But to the question about gap years earlier, I would not encourage necessarily thinking about a gap year if you weren't already, just because those might not run either. And trying to get some type of work or travel feels really unknown at this point. And so I think if you've got a seat at an institution and that had been your initial plan, I would continue to try and go with it and work with that school to see what their plans are for the fall.
All right. Hey, so so after we come out of break, what do we do?
You will wrap it up with about 30 seconds to take it.
Oh, 30 seconds. So no Dr. Alok Patel, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Lauren, thank you so very much. It was amazing talking to you. Thank you for your expertise and time. Let's keep the conversation going.
All right.
All right, take care.
10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4,
All right, that's going to do it for this particular show. We hope you got some information you needed for yourself, your family, your college students, your high school juniors, seniors who might be applying next year, even sophomores and freshmen. Just to note that we will be here every day at 3 o'clock on air and on live stream answering your questions. A lot of the questions we addressed today were sent by students who are following us on Facebook Live, Instagram, YouTube Live, ABC7news.com, and the ABC7 News app. World News Tonight is coming up next. Thanks for joining us today. Bye-bye. All righty. Thank you very much.